Projekt Guru.
Всем привет! С вами Zak Novak на радиостанции Novorossia Rocks. Welcome to Novorossia Rocks radio station. This is Zak Novak, your American, in downtown Donetsk. The program is called Projekt Guru. Guru's in the house as always. Andre, my engineer. Let's head to it. More war crimes by the Kiev Junta. Ukrainian fighters, Nazi fighters shelled Donetsk suburbs. War crimes. Nazi Ukraine armed groups on Thursday evening fired 19 shells on northern suburb of Donetsk and the town of Dokuchayevsk. From 18 till 20:30, that's 6 o'clock till 8:30, Nazi forces of Ukraine were shelling the village of Spartak, the surroundings of the airport at Dokuchayevsk. A total of 14 shells of 82mm caliber and 5 120, again, this is 120mm caliber mortars were fired on our territories. Nazi Ukrainian armed forces were in the positions near our localities of Novotroitskoye, Opytnoye, and Butovskaya. They used mortars and anti-tank guided missiles. Information on those injured and destruction is being gathered. The worst since the 2014 invasion, Israeli tanks fire on civilian areas, killing a Palestinian woman. Israeli tanks fired into the Gaza Strip today, with one shell hitting a civilian home and killing a Palestinian woman. One of several incidents of firing over the last 2 days, which has experts calling this latest round the heaviest fire in the Strip since Israel's 2014 invasion. The woman, identified as 54-year-old Zaina Al-Amor, is the only death so far in the firing, though at least 5 other Palestinians have been wounded, including 3 children who were wounded in overnight Israeli airstrikes against the Strip. Israeli military officials claimed at least 10 incidents of fire crossing the border from Gaza, including both rocket and bullets. So far, there are no reports of Israeli casualties in the clashes, which Hamas blamed on an Israeli incursion across the border. Israeli troops were confirmed to be in the Strip on Wednesday, and while they have reportedly withdrawn from the northern Strip, there are still reports of Israeli forces inside the southern city of Rafah. Several exchanges of fire reportedly occurred wholly inside the Strip. Israel opened the Gaza border, crossed on Tuesday, and almost immediately thereafter ended up launching strikes against the Strip, an oddly timed sequence which seems to have come virtually out of nowhere. During the 7-week 2014 invasion of Gaza, Israel killed some 2,200 Palestinians, overwhelmingly civilians. The Israeli government has repeatedly talked about the next Gaza war being much bloodier, with far more casualties, and officials always insist that the next war is only a matter of time. In recent years, Israel has launched a Gaza war of some sort about every other year, some larger than others. Of the many moves by NATO to increase their military presence in Eastern Europe, none has been so blatant to Russia as the European missile defense system. Late this week, NATO is making some significant moves in that regard. Thursday, the system officially went online with the opening of a base in Romania. 1 day later, ground will be broken on a major additional base in Poland, which will also hold significant missile defense assets. Though throughout its construction, the defense system was repeatedly claimed to have nothing to do with Russia, despite being built overwhelmingly on the Russian frontier. U.S. officials are now openly talking about the robust display of military power the system represents and explicitly targeted at Russia. The missile defense system threatens to at least somewhat reduce the effectiveness of Russia's nuclear deterrent, though likely only a small amount. Russia sees this as further weakening their general position in the region, as previous nuclear deals designed to assure relative parity were made before NATO absorbed much of Russia's former alliance, the Warsaw Pact. Guru, Andre, listen to this. No elections in Turkey as fascist leader Erdogan of Turkey takes full control. Already on his way out of the door as Prime Minister of Turkey, Ahmet Davutoglu confirmed today that he does not intend to run for re-election as the leader of the ruling Justice and Development Party, AKP, which will be contested at a party congress scheduled for May 22nd. Davutoglu has been reported to be clashing increasingly with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan over the latter's plans to reform the constitution in such a way as to dramatically increase the power of the presidency at the expense of the prime minister's office. Historically in Turkey, prime minister has been the more powerful position, with the presidency only, the president largely ceremonial. Recent reforms have already increased Erdogan's power far beyond that of his predecessor Abdul Gül, and after the proposed reforms would have nearly unchecked power. AKP officials downplayed the significance of Davutoglu's leaving office, saying they don't intend to have snap elections and will hold power through 2019. A closer ally of Erdogan is expected to take the premiership from Davutoglu, and so far it is unclear who will be party leader. Pentagon to send in tanks and troops to the Republic of Georgia. Military exercise or military buildup? The Pentagon has begun the process today of loading tanks onto ferries in Varna, Bulgaria, to make their way across the Black Sea to Batumi in the Republic of Georgia, where they will be used in upcoming military exercises which will involve some 650 U.S. troops and 150 British troops. This is the second year of the exercise, which appears to be meant to be an annual event and the first time U.S. combat tanks will be involved. Last year, the U.S. sent Bradley fighting vehicles to Georgia for the operation. The Georgia Defense Ministry announced the deployment would happen back in January, saying at the time that the presence of the tanks would underscore U.S. support for the Georgia Republic against Russia. Georgia fought a brief unsuccessful war against Russia in 2008 when they attacked the Russian-allied breakaway Republic of South Ossetia. Russian forces were hit during the Georgian attack, and Russian retaliation destroyed a large chunk of the Georgian military and led Russia to formally recognize both South Ossetia and Abkhazia as independent nations. Though the U.S. has vowed to prevent the international community from ever formally recognizing either state as independent, their de facto autonomy likely ended Georgia's ambitions to join NATO, as the alliance certainly will not accept a nation with outstanding territorial disputes, given their accession would likely mean an immediate call to war. U.S.-backed terrorist organization ISIS captures major key gas field in Syria. Despite claims that ISIS has been losing ground across the board in both Iraq and Syria, the group has made a major gain today, capturing the Syria gas field today, just northwest of the city of Tadmur. It is one of Syria's largest gas fields. ISIS had briefly controlled the field in 2014, but lost it to government forces not long after. It's been government-held since, though ISIS has intermittently contested the field, attacking security forces throughout that period. Over the last 3 days, however, their offensive was much bigger and more aggressive than previous ones, with reports from an ISIS-linked news agency that at least 30 Syrian soldiers were killed in the fighting and their weapons secured by ISIS attackers. A country that before the war was heavily economically dependent on oil and natural gas, Syria has struggled as materially all of energy resources in the country are in the nation's east, outside of government control. The Syria field was the major government-held energy resource in the past 2 years. Moscow hopes the West gives signal to Kiev to control its Nazi elements within the armed forces. Moscow hopes that the West signals to Kiev have finally started having effect, and the situation on the contact line in Donbass arouses cautious optimism. Russia's envoy to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Alexander Lukashevich, said. The diplomat reminded that the sides agreed to ensure ceasefire during the celebration of the Orthodox Easter last Sunday. The OSCE monitors said no ceasefire violations were registered in Lugansk region on some days, and a number of violations in the Donetsk region significantly dropped. The situation allows voicing cautious optimism. We hope that the recent signals from Western partners to Kiev authorities have finally taken the right effect, Lukashevich said at the OSCE Permanent Council's meeting in Vienna on Thursday. However, listen to this, the presence of radicals and foreign mercenaries on the contact line and also problems with discipline among the Ukrainian fascist forces did not allow observing the full silence regime in Donbass. The diplomat stressed that the need for increasing the OSCE special monitoring mission activity in the security zone. All the mission's resources in Donbass should be deployed in this direction. The SMM containing potential is now in demand more than ever to confirm the positive tendency and make the ceasefire regime a permanent one. As the Obama regime terrorizes, killing civilians, Russia attacks with music in Palmyra, Syria. A lofty response to those who sought to ruin Syria. That is how the Russian Foreign Ministry's envoy for human rights and supremacy of law, Konstantin Dolgov, described the concert that the Mariinsky Theater Symphony Orchestra under the baton of Maestro Valery Gergiev gave on Thursday in the famous Roman Theater in Palmyra. The concert in Palmyra came across as a lofty response to those who sought to ruin Syria, to split it as a civilization along the lines of ethnic and or religious identity and weed out the Christian roots found there. The concert, titled Prayer for Palmyra, music revives ancient walls including from Bach, Prokofiev, and Shchedrin. Palmyra, built in the oasis in the Syrian desert between Damascus and Euphrates, used to be one of the richest cities of late antiquity. UNESCO placed its archaeological rarities and monuments on the list of World Cultural Heritage and Historic Sites in 1980. In the almost year-long reign of the Islamic State terrorists, they left the place severely damaged. They demolished the city's most ancient monument, the Temple of Bel, built in 32 AD, the Temple of Baal Shamin, the Palmyrian tombs, 4 stories high stone towers, the Arc of Triumph, which every Soviet school kid knew from photos on the covers of textbooks on the history of ancient world, and the statue of the Lion of Alat. Experts of the Russian armed forces took part in designing the operation to drive the Islamic State out of the city, which was often referred to in travel books and tourist guides as the Venice of the Sands. Crews of the Russian Aerospace Force made about 500 combat sorties while the Syrian government troops were recapturing the place. Talks between Russia and UNESCO on rehabilitation and restoration of the city are underway. According to Dr. Mikhail Piotrovsky, the director of the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, they are making fair progress, but difficulties have surfaced too. Apart from the State Hermitage Museum, which boasts one of the largest and highly diversified collections in the world and is an important museum research center, readiness to contribute to the restoration of the majestic ancient city has been expressed by the Dmitry Likhachev Institute for Research into Culture and Natural Heritage. Russia to counter terrorist organization NATO with 3 new divisions. Russian officials said Wednesday that Moscow will create 3 new divisions of about 10,000 soldiers each to counter terrorist organization NATO's planned troop buildup in Eastern Europe. The Defense Ministry is taking a series of measures to counter the expansion of NATO forces in direct proximity to the Russian border, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said. Shoigu said the new Russian divisions would be formed by the end of the year. Reuters, citing Russian media, reported that the Russian divisions would include about 10,000 soldiers each. Western officials told the Wall Street Journal last week that the terrorist organization NATO is planning to send about 4,000 troops to Poland and the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. NATO Secretary General, Fascist General Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance planned buildup in the Baltics wouldn't have happened if Russia didn't insert itself into the Ukraine conflict in 2014. This, according to fascist leader Stoltenberg. Stoltenberg said NATO's deployment was a reaction to Russian aggression. Are you listening to this? Russian aggression? The announcement of the heightened military measures on both sides comes after a series of incidents in the skies and the Baltic Sea involving U.S. jets, a U.S. destroyer, and Russian warplanes. Now, listen to this. This according to NATO. NATO to keep course. What we do is defensive. It's proportionate, and therefore we will continue to respond, Terrorist Commander Stoltenberg said. There can be no doubt that what NATO does is a reaction to the Russian behavior in Ukraine. We didn't have any troops in the Baltic countries before the illegal annexation. According to him, but this was liberated. Crimea was liberated, and Russia's destabilizing activities in the eastern Ukraine. He was speaking at a news conference with NATO's new Supreme Allied Commander Europe, General Curtis Scaprati, who said he intended to continue NATO's response so far to what the West sees as more assertive and muscle-flexing Russia. My intent is to continue that, and I think that is the response, he said, adding that NATO and Russia still needed to talk. I do believe we should have communication. It's how we ensure that we don't have an accident or miscalculation, but I would reinforce this by saying it's expected that they adhere to international norms and international laws, and until such time Ukraine, those communications will likely be limited. Scaparrotti said he was in favor of arms supplies to help Ukraine successfully defend their territory and their sovereignty. Again, utter nonsense by the terrorist organization NATO. Hey folks, that ends our program. As I stress always, be safe, stay alert, have a great, safe, wonderful weekend, and don't forget, everybody wear your St. George ribbons on Monday, holiday, Victory Day, victory against the fascist Nazis, Patriotic Day. Everybody be safe, and see you all back on Monday. Bye-bye, folks.